nothing to do with the Giants playing with animals. At this time, as we do at the beginning of all school assemblies, if I could ask you to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I do see a number of familiar faces that have joined us tonight. Thank you so much for coming out on what is not the most beautiful night of our month to hear more about our bond presentation. There's a few precursors that I would like to offer. Right now, this is completely a proposal. This is discussion. Tonight is intended to hear your feedback, to answer any questions that you may have, and take any suggestions or things you may want us to focus on before finalizing the proposal. This proposal does not become finalized until the Board of Education takes action on it, and they are scheduled to do so at the September 28th business meeting. So tonight is purposefully planned to get some feedback from the community and to listen to any suggestions or concerns you may have. We have 3 members of the board currently with us right now. We have Mrs. Mamalito, who is a member of the board. We have Mr. Tamia, who is the board vice president. And we have Mrs. Reed, who is the board president. Mrs. Lochner will be helping you with the presentation. She's our assistant superintendent for business and has been involved in this process since the very beginning. We also have some resources to help us with any questions that may come up. Mr. Bill Jackson is here. He'll be serving as counsel, bond counsel for the project, if the board does decide to move forward. John McDonald is our director of facilities, has certainly been an integral part of the team to put together the proposal. And then 2 of our architects from BVS, Fred Siva and Carolisa Grunda, are both here from BVS. They are the district-appointed architects who have helped us a lot in putting together the proposal that the board is entertaining. Mrs. Weiss is here this evening from the Board of Education. Thank you for joining us. And for all of you watching from home, we appreciate you tuning in. And just so the community is aware, what we do with these videos is as soon as the event is complete, the following day we tend to post it to YouTube. And we put a link on our website so that anyone who missed the presentation or is curious to see it again can simply go to YouTube and watch the whole thing. It tends to be, we've noticed over the last year or so since we began live streaming, that live performances are attended, about this number, but then as the days go by, the amount of views on the YouTube really do add up very quickly. So although our community doesn't typically come out in full force for presentations, I would say a good percentage of the community is watching the presentations at their own leisure after they've taken place. So we thank you in advance for those of you that are watching on YouTube. Before I touch on the discussion, I just wanted to bring your attention to some videos that have been posted recently to YouTube. At the end of August, we had a rainstorm. I'm sure you remember that there was a heavy amount of rain that all fell within a short period of time. That was horrible timing for our buildings. We were just getting ready to open for school. The buildings were looking as best as they can due to the hard work of many, many people. And the rains came, and here's what happened at Harley Avenue. And here's what happened at Elwood Middle School, just on the other side of that wall, near the gymnasium. Please forgive the narration.
This is what's happening down the walls of Elwood Middle School right now. Maybe.
So, as we were expecting a tropical storm Tuesday night into Wednesday, the timing of this bond could not be more indicative of our need. We really have some needs in the district that can't be ignored. And I'm going to try to take the community through tonight's presentation about everything that we identified as a priority for our facilities and how we intend to finance them and the reason for them. My intention is to go through the whole presentation with Ms. Laughlin's assistant and then circle back for any questions that you have. But if there's something urgent, just simply raise your hand and we can stop at that point. So as I mentioned, when we truly started to get ready to propose a bond, this is something that's been years in the making. Most of you know that this is the beginning of my second year as superintendent. And as part of my first year transitional plan to the position, I created a 100-day plan. And as part of that plan, I tried to review every aspect of our organization, from the quality of the instructional program, all of our staffing, our cafeteria service, our transportation, and our facilities. And I have to tell you very candidly, there are many, many aspects of our program that get very high marks. The quality of the instruction taking place in the classrooms is terrific. The quality of our leaders is wonderful. We have dedicated faculty. There were so many things that I had the opportunity to really walk in and see a great level of success. Where we really have some needs is our facilities. And there are reasons for that. And we can talk about some of the financial history of the district, but plain and simple, the projects that we're going to talk about tonight are budget prohibitive. We can't include projects of this size in a typical operating budget for the school district while maintaining the tax cap. We understand that this is a community that really doesn't want to entertain the thought of piercing the cap. We learned that. So we really need to make sure that we're putting up a budget that is below the tax cap and maintains all of our programs and staffing and offerings for students. When you see the scope of some of the work that needs to be done, it becomes pretty clear that there are projects that are desperately needed that cannot be included without decimating our instructional program because there's expense associated. So it really just led the board and the board's facilities committee to say the only way to address the work that absolutely has to be done here in Elwood is by posting a capital bond. We are fortunate, as Mrs. Ockenham to explain, that the finances line up to make it a good time to bring this proposal to the community. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But a good percentage of what we're discussing is clearly health and safety items. There are, however, educational enhancements included in the project as well. Things that we feel will improve the programs and the offerings we have for our students. So we'll talk about that. And then the other piece. We have some debt that is expiring from past projects that were done, from previous loans that were taken. So this is a time where we can borrow new money at a very low interest rate, a very attractive rate of borrowing, and replace debt that already exists. And that will help to minimize the impact to our taxpayers, which is also very important. We are paying off loans and asking the community to consider taking new loans for these purposes. So there will be two separate propositions, and there's a strong reason for that on the ballot should the board choose to take action on September 28th. There will be a vote on the bond for the community on November 28th. And Proposition 1 is a total of about $34.5 million, and you see there the average impact on the taxpayer, which the next slide will help to further explain if you are not in an average household. We have a separate proposition that's $3.7 million that just speaks to some enhancements to our athletic department. Why did we separate? Number one, Proposition 1 focuses mainly on health and safety items and some educational enhancements. I would be hard pressed to explain to the community how the items in Proposition 2 speak to health and safety. They don't. They're wonderful enhancements that would benefit our athletic program. When we sent the survey out to the community, there were very few issues where the community was very divided strongly. When we asked about a proposal for a synthetic field to replace the natural grass football field and some enhancements, there was a great divide. We had members of the community who were strongly in agreement, and we had members of the community who were strongly opposed. So upon recommendation from the administration, the board said, I think the best idea would be to let the community decide, rather than the board having to take a position in one or another, or the administration to make a recommendation to have or not have a synthetic field. The proposal is to include it as a separate proposition and let the community vote whether or not they support that additional finance. But the total in both propositions combined would be at that just over $38 million mark, and the average tax impact, and average I know is a difficult word, would be about $333 a year. Mrs. Laughlin helped me to put together this slide, and you can see where average is. And if you look at your tax bill and look at the portion that's paid to school taxes, that might help you to figure out which monthly impact, which yearly impact is more appropriate for your household. We also have the business offices working on putting a calculator on the business portal of the website that will enable you to go in and put in your exact taxes, and it will calculate for you what the impact of the proposed bond will be to your household. That should come up within the next few weeks, and it'll be helpful to our residents, I believe. But average is tough, so hopefully this helps you find yourself on the scale a bit, so you can see what the financial impact would be for your household. This is if both 1 and 2 were to be passed by the community. Slightly greater financial impact because of the additional $3.7 million. And then what we did for the presentation, I hope you find helpful. We tried to break down the different enhancements and projects that would be proposed by building. There is definitively something happening in each of our facilities that's substantial in nature. So I'll take you quickly through it, and then if you would allow at the end, we'll answer any questions. So in Harley Avenue, there's 3 major initiatives, and it speaks to the sidewalks, the roof replacement, and the cafeteria. I think you'll notice some consistency throughout the proposal that these are 3 big items in each of our buildings. So in Harley Avenue, this is the conditions of the sidewalks. It's been quite some time since that concrete was poured. As you know, the weather plays a role in erosion to concrete, cracking, breaking, and many of our sidewalks have been patched as best as possible by our crew, but it's time where we need some demolition and replacement. These pictures illustrate some of the problems there, but you can see what's been budgeted for concrete sidewalk. This presentation, by the way, will be posted to the website tomorrow, so if you want to refer to any of this information, it'll be there. The roof. Each of our 4 buildings needs a roof. Due to the size of Harley being smaller, the $1.5 million is actually a more reasonable charge to replace the entire roof than the other buildings which have larger space, square footage. That's how the price is calculated. This is the price to repair the roof at Harley. That video I showed you to start our forum was taken at Harley. When it rains, it pours inside. We simply can't allow the buildings to remain at risk each time we have a weather event. What am I most concerned about the weather forecast from Tuesday into Wednesday? The damage that's going to be done to our facilities. The roofs have been patched and repaired and had as much work done to them as possible to remediate the problems that we're having, but what is desperately needed is a full replacement. It's been since 1994 since that occurred. There are just so many times you can make repairs before you need a full replacement, and that's what's needed at Harley. The cafeteria needs renovation. You can see the cracks in the tile floor, and that's patched nicely by our custodial department, but certainly not a long-term solution. The lighting is inadequate for this facility. If you haven't been in Harley in a while, it's a strange design for a cafeteria, and they use it as a cafetorium. They hold assemblies there for our younger students and their parents, and it's really not an environment that's conducive to learning, and it's certainly not the appearance that reflects our community's values. So if you see on the list here for Harley, everything that would be done within the cafeteria is on the right. By the way, you note that air conditioning is on the list to be added to the cafeteria at Harley and the other buildings. While it's cost prohibitive to add air conditioning to all classroom space, we think it's important from a health and safety perspective to have large group gathering areas in each of our buildings that would be air conditioned. There are some very hot days in September and October, and some very hot days in May and June, where school is in session that we're concerned if there isn't a place where we can't bring our students to be cool. So we've identified our auditoriums and our cafeterias to serve that purpose. So here are some more descriptives. You'll see that there's a lot of proposals that speak to ADA compliance, the Americans with Disabilities Act. There are many regulations that exist in New York State for our schools that we have been grandfathered in regarding. When the buildings were built, when the last renovations were done, we were ADA compliant. The law requires that if you're going to take on new construction projects, you must bring your buildings up to current ADA compliance. So because we have some work to do, we must include proposals that help us to become ADA compliant, because the rules in 2017 are simply new and different than when we originally built our buildings. So you'll see that some changes to the nurse's office, our kindergarten classroom entrances would need to be done in order to become ADA compliant. You see other items on the list: ventilation and exhaust, drainage. You will see consistently throughout the presentation. You know that Elwood has a long-standing issue with flooding parking lots and around our school facilities. The architects worked with our engineers to make sure that these proposals would end those drainage concerns once and for all, but it doesn't come at an insignificant expense. So just at Harley, drainage would account for $105,000 to target that playground area that is not usual for days after rain. pipe tunnel abatement, we should speak about that. It's important that the community understands that each of our buildings has the presence of asbestos. That is not uncommon for buildings built between the times that these schools were constructed. Asbestos does not present a health hazard to our students, Dr. Diostat. It does present a health hazard if it is disturbed. So anytime we're doing a project where the asbestos insulation of the asbestos taping or glue is being disturbed, we have to bring in an outside vendor to do an abatement, and that means the safe removal of the asbestos materials. That is very expensive. So a good deal of our proposals is to remove asbestos from our buildings in the areas that it's located once and for all. So that when we do these jobs, when we make these repairs, our own internal crew can do it without having to worry about carcinogens and without having to bring in specialized crew to do the work for them. So you'll see that pipe tunnel abatement. That would allow our crew to do a good deal of the plumbing and electrical work that currently we have to contract out. Flooring replacements. We have a number of floors that, again, were held down with asbestos. And this would help to remove them and to be able to replace the tile. Right now, if a student drops a heavy object and it cracks a tile on one of those 9x9 floors, it has to stay cracked, it has to be repaired. You can't pick up the new tile and replace it with a new tile. That would require asbestos abatement, and it's just cost prohibitive.
The 404 includes abatement?
Correct. So, some other items that we continue at Harley, you'll see consistently, we want to do some things with the doors and the locks, exterior wall construction, fire alarm, again, that's a compliance issue. The alarms meet code for then, not for now. You'll see in newly constructed buildings with the fire alarm system, you'll see flashing lights that go along with the sound for hearing impaired individuals, and wall pay. That's just something I'm surprised we don't already have. There is some significant expense associated with it, but most gymnasiums you visit in other districts, all the walls will be padded for the safety of children. We want to make sure we get there as well. Let's do this. Any questions about Harley specifically? At Boyd, we're targeting some of the very similar thing, but some other items as well. The roof needs to be replaced at Boyd because it is a larger building, and that would be a $2.5 million expense. These are some pictures that were taken well after rains had ceased. Again, our crew has done a great job of patching and replacing, but the water still comes in every time it rains. And there is severe water damage in parts of the building because of it. Sidewalks are better at Boyd than they are in some other places, but there is some repair work that needs to be done. There is currently a sinkhole in the back bus loop by the rear entrance where the bus is pulling for dismissal. And that is a ground under repair. We're doing our best. Because of some drainage issues and some need for new concrete and asphalt, that would be targeted here. It's coned off at the present time. One of the challenges we have at Boyd is it's a beautiful facility. And if you haven't been in the Boyd Auditorium since the remodeling, you really should make it your business to be there. It's probably the nicest room in the entire district. Unfortunately, we can't use it for as many gatherings as we would like and the principal of the building, Dr. Toscano, would like, because there isn't ample parking to invite large group of parents for any type of production at Boyd. So we're looking to use some of the space that is owned by the district, that's currently wooded area, to create an additional overflow parking lot. In this artist rendering, that would add about 60 spaces, and it would come with a cost of about $300,000. So it's not an insignificant expense, but it would truly be very beneficial to the daily operation of the Boyd. That's behind the building. When you go through the separate driveway, when you take the first right-hand turn when you're going up the Boyd driveway and go around the back, where the faculty parks and where the buses assemble, it would be in the wooded area at the rear of that lot.
How many spots are there currently?
For those of you watching from home, we have about 150 current spots. This would add an additional 60.
Well, I'm just going to...
Well, there's about 175 children per grade level, and when you try to do full grade level or full building assemblies, there's certainly not enough parking for all the parents to attend. And there are more than a few nights a year where the principal would very much like to hold events at Boyd that are held here instead because of more parking
I
needs.
understand they don't use that, also, like a parade, because that's what it's in.
That's part of our proposal. Thank you for raising it.
The auditorium at Boyd has a city. For years. And it works.
Terrific. Question?
Yes, the area of the park myself, that's the present numbers, shows, saying what happened.
Well, that wooded area is an area that belongs to the district, and part of the expense would be clearing the field to prepare for the paving.
So does that have to be all removed? And
I assume that's part of the project.
Remember they used to be a beach trail back there, still use that?
I'm not aware of that. Yes.
I guess my concern is following up the previous ones. I know years ago there was concern there was a proposal to build a parking lot there. They wish that there were things, and there was concern that had not been an area where a lot of stuff could be done. So we need to make sure that the cost projection that's included is that so that's
I see our architects are taking notes. I see our architects. You know what? Perhaps it would be best for them if I finish the presentation and we ask questions to come to the microphone so we can all hear it and the recording. I apologize. I apologize. So that would be an additional lot at the other piece would assist us with student drop-off. For any of you that have tried to pull your car into the Boyd area during arrival and dismissal, you know that it can be very difficult to navigate that. This would add an additional lane for parents doing pick-up and drop-off, so others can still pass by safely and get in and out of the building through the parking lot. It would also add that additional walkway space for any pedestrians that would be coming up and clear for traffic. It would take minimal field space away. There's no concern about the loss of any field space that's used for physical education or outside groups. These are some other proposals, consistent with the other buildings for Boyd. Some ADA compliance issues, flooring again, with the 9x9 tiles that require the asbestos abatement. Air conditioning would provide air conditioning, and forgive my confusion, sir, for the cafeteria is the area we're looking to identify at Boyd. The auditorium is all set to go. Wall padding again, and drainage again. We have a lot of investment into heating. We need to invest a lot of finances into removing water from the equation in Elwood School. Some interior doors and hardware. The pipe tunnel abatement again, as explained. Again, upgrades to the fire alarm system. Some ventilation and exhaust issues in some targeted areas where we have some difficulty right now. So these are the projects that are targeted. At Elwood Middle School, the building that we are currently in, the scope of the range of the project is a bit larger because the building is larger and in more need of repair. So this is a list of some of the things we would be looking to address. The roof replacement, a renovation to our cafeteria, art room, family and consumer science classrooms, this auditorium, locker room repairs, drainage concerns, the sidewalks, and a reconstructed parent drop-off area for arrival and dismissal. So we'll talk a little bit about these. I don't want to be too redundant. When it rains, it pours. You saw the video that demonstrates a typical rainy day in August. When we have storms like we're expecting now, the damage that will be done to this building will be excessive. There are banks of lockers we're not able to assign to students because the water pours into them. There are areas of classrooms where teachers know not to store any materials or place any belongings because they will get wet. It's not a good situation. It's something that absolutely needs to be addressed. This is a picture of our new principal in her first week finding out the challenges that we experience when we have heavy rain. That picture on the right-hand side is actually district office hallway. on occasion, when we have heavy rains, water will bubble up through drains in the floor. It doesn't come down through the ceilings, it comes up from the floor. So for there, we have to make sure all of the roofs, leaders, and gutters, and things like that, and the drainage around the building is addressed. But again, no small price at $3.6 million. Cafeteria renovations, for those of you that spent any time in the cafeteria, you know that it's very worn and dated. You know that there's furniture that needs to be replaced. There is aesthetics that needs to be addressed. There is lighting that needs to be addressed, and everything that's listed on the side. One of the things that's important to point out is that there are some aspects of our facilities that are adequate. I would have a hard time, sharing with the community that they are not. But we're not looking for that. We live in a community that places a great deal of pride in our educational program. And I think the value that this district emphasizes on education is not necessarily reflected in all our facilities. So while some of our areas are adequate, we are trying to create spaces that our students can be proud of, that our community can be proud of, that our taxpayers feel they're investing their money with. So some of the things we mentioned are to bring our buildings up to 2017 standards. This is one of the art rooms in Elwood Middle School. It is clearly something that hasn't been addressed or touched in quite some time. So if you look at the list of things we would do, adding storage is very important for an art space. There's no place to put the materials. Replacing some of the casework, that's the wooden cabinetries and things like that. Finishes, painting the room, fixing the molding, and new floor ceilings and lighting just to make it adequate for the class space. Again, this is our family consumer science classroom. Well, it doesn't look so bad in the pictures. It just looks a bit like an antiquated kitchen. Many of those cabinetries and appliances are in ill repair, and we're not able to use them for the instructional purposes they're intended for. So you see the list includes casework, appliances, and finishes, and floors, and lighting, and all of those other items. One thing we plan to do after the board finalizes the proposal, should they elect to do that at the meeting on the 28th, is we'll use time in October and November to offer tours of our facilities to our residents, so that while sometimes the picture doesn't tell the full story, anyone who's interested in looking at some of these areas concerned will be invited to do so. This is a slide you can kind of just look around. Obviously, this room has seen better days. This cost analysis involves a full gutting and replacing of everything you're looking at in the auditorium. We would have new sound and lights, we would have new curtains, we would have all new seating, we would have all new carpeting, and really make this a room that we can be proud of and that we can use to showcase so many of the talents of our students. It has a big price tag. As you can tell, this room is currently air conditioned. There are some repairs that need to be made to that unit so it continues to work for a longer period of time. This is the back entrance of our building by our maintenance and operations entrance. This is that day of heavy rain, and you can see that the need for drainage is extreme, and the need for new paving and asphalt exists as well. So it's not a small price tag, but it's something that's clearly needed. This is the curbing and sidewalks. We need repairs here. Anything that's a trip hazard, anything that has been this weathered in practice, simply needs to be replaced. And I think these pictures illustrate just a small piece of that challenge. Locker room repairs. The locker rooms are the original construction and the original equipment for the building. The Board of Education asked the architects to look at this proposal after it was first presented to the board as a $1.2 million expense. And then you can see upon further review that that figure has been cut in half. How did we do it? We still want to look to renovate the locker room space, the coaching area, to make it adequate for our students, to make it usable for our students. But the shower area, which involves a lot of new plumbing and tile work and things of that nature, we may not address at this time. It's come to our attention that in the middle school, showers are barely, if ever, used. So to ask the community to invest the additional $600,000 is difficult. Do we think ideally we'd like to have it? Yes. We hold a wrestling program here. It is a requirement of a wrestling team. They must shower before leaving the facilities. The majority takes place at the high school where there are working showers in the locker rooms. But here, the showers work. That's about as far as I can go with that statement. But we're not asking in the initial proposal that an additional $600,000 to redo the showers. What has been suggested by many parents, and something that the board was very agreeable to, was looking to make changing areas out of the shower area, so that when young ladies and gentlemen are using the locker room facilities during their regular phys ed instruction or during team activities, they have a bit more privacy for changing, which seems to be something that's very attractive to students and understandable. Please ignore the picture, but understand that we are currently engaged in the process of identifying a better way to do our arrival and dismissal procedure here at the middle school. For those of you middle school students, either current or past, you know that it gets somewhat chaotic during our arrival and dismissal time because of the large number of students that walk or are driven to the school, and how sporadic the bus arrival is with all the intermingling cars and walkers. We don't feel it's a safe condition. We do not feel it's the most conducive to an organized arrival and dismissal procedure. So we're investigating different methodologies that would create a more safe environment, a more structured environment for arrival and dismissal. This was one artist rendering which helped us to determine a price. It's not a small price because it involves a great deal of concrete and asphalt, but it helps us give us a spending target of what our new plan may look like. This is one picture. I don't expect it'll be the final proposal, but this is something we'll be working on. These are some of the other proposals for Elwood Middle School. Ceiling fans for our classrooms. Air conditioning in all of our rooms is cost prohibitive, but we're looking for ways to make sure that our students on practice are comfortable on some of those oppressive days. Adding ceiling fans to some of the classrooms here and at the high school, the way they are modeled at the elementary school, and in some classrooms, I think is a good step in the right direction. The music suite within this building has had a long period of time of some mildew smells and some presence of moisture. This would be a complete renovation of that room, and doing that while repairing the roof would solve that problem once and for all. And we'll have a great space for our musicians. Some ADA compliance issues, again, interior hardware for the doors, septic system, which is a very motivating project to have to spend money on, but it's required. Some flooring replacement, that same story with the original 9x9 tiling with the asbestos statements required. Ventilation and exhaust in some targeted areas. Upgrades to the fire alarm system to make them ADA compliant and compliant with the new regulation that exists regarding carbon monoxide detector. And pipe total abatement, as we discussed in the other building. John Glenn High School, we also have a similar list of projects that we'll be looking to address. The roof at John Glenn High School is $3.65 million. The entire roof needs to be ripped off and replaced. That is a very, very wet floor, falling rains in the walls. The cafeteria is in need of renovation. All the furniture needs to be replaced. There are chairs that are broken when children sit in them. There are tables that are cracked and chipped. You talk about things like finishings for the ceiling and the lighting to make it adequate for the space. Some door replacements, some furniture replacement, and we are looking to add air conditioning to that large roof, which accounts for a portion of that $1.1 million. We want the cafeteria in the high school to be a place where students feel comfortable, a place where they can really take advantage of that time they have. When we look at the art room in John Glenn, we see that it is free of true storage space, and it needs some additional cabinetry and woodwork. So that is a nice day for the art room. And again, some of the pictures you may look at and say, well, that doesn't look so bad. That's why we're going to give them tours, because I think when you're there and you're in the facility, you have a better sense of some of the challenges we face. These are the family and consumer science classrooms up at the high school. Mrs. Loughlin refers to this as Pleasantville, because it does feel like you've stepped back in time about 40 or 50 years with the cabinetry and appliances that exist. And it just doesn't match the needs of our current instructional program. So we're looking to renovate those spaces. This is the guidance suite. The guidance suite, for those of you that haven't been there recently, it resembles working in a basement. This is not a place that is very attractive to students to come in to work with their counselors. We're looking to make it a more attractive spot for students to come in. We need to add some offices that would allow for confidentiality. We're trying to add a conference space that would give parents and students in the area to work together with their guidance counselors. We're looking for a place when college recruiters visit us to have a workable space that happens frequently. And I understand that the picture doesn't really give it justice to the concerns we have there. But I invite you to take the tour and get a sense of why that is not the most attractive portion of our campus. Sidewalks, I am certain when these brickwork projects was completed, this was a beautiful aspect of John Glenn High School. Unfortunately, because brick settles differently than concrete, there's been a great deal of separation. We now have some trip hazards out there, and what we're looking to do is remove all the concrete and brickwork and replace it with just straight concrete to make it a more safe environment. I know there have been some incidents at the high school in the recent past. We really need to make sure this is something we address moving forward. I did look specifically at it. The tennis courts. This is an area of athletics that we didn't include in Proposition 2 because we see it as an immediate health and safety need. Our courts are in a place now where we really can't ask our students to compete on them without the safety concerns that we do have. The cracks, the settling. These courts probably needed to be replaced 10 years ago. Our gentlemen have done a great job making repairs to them so they can be used, so they can play. But it's certainly not a source of pride for the community, and it's not the safe environment that we want for our student athletes. This is something that I hope the community will support because this is an area of our facilities that the community has access to. When we're not in session and students aren't here, we like to see our community, our residents come down and use the courts. So this would be renovations for all 7 tennis courts. It's not an insignificant expense. John Glenn High School auditorium is in a bit better shape than the middle school. The reason why the price is nearly the same is because it is not currently air conditioned. Adding that air conditioning unit to the auditorium accounts for a portion of that $2.1 million, and you can see everything else we're trying to do. The high school would not be a complete gut the way this room would be because we have found a vendor that has parts that we can use to replace broken chairs and things that you see pictured. We didn't have that for a period of time. Our gentlemen were doing a great job using parts from one chair to make another chair. Now we're able to order some new parts and put the entire auditorium back together. So we're not looking to replace all the seating, which saves a good portion of financing. These are some other identified priorities for the high school. Science-led renovations, there's 2 rooms. It's to make sure that we're providing students with all the resources they need for the classes taking place in those sections. We're renovating what was the woodshop lab to be a usable lab for our robotics program. Very different needs for the room, very different setup. Ceiling fans for the classroom for the second floor would certainly be appreciated on the note. Upgrades again to the fire alarm systems, ventilation, height cell abatement, and drainage, very consistent with what you see in other buildings. That's a big number for drainage, but for those of you that have heard of Lake Elwood, which forms in the parking lot outside the tennis courts, that would be solved once and for all. Some other projects include ADA compliances, those interior doors and hardware, the floors once again, the exterior, wall construction, septic system, and the last one is something that needs to be discussed a bit. Football field and track renovations. The track must absolutely be renovated. The rubberized surface has already been replaced twice, not to a 3rd time. So when the track wears out, all of the rubberized surface needs to be removed and a new track needs to be poured. That will happen in the next 5 years or so. This is scheduled to be a 15-year bump. So looking ahead, knowing that that project, which is nearly $500,000, needs to be done, we don't want to go out to the community again a few years from now and say, we neglected the track. We need to incur some additional debt. So that has been included in that. When you do any work to your athletic fields like this, the law requires that you then make that surface ADA compliant. So part of the project became adding a sidewalk to lead to the track in the football field as part of renovating the track. It's something that's required by the state. We also included nearly $500,000 in renovating the current football field. For those who haven't been on the field recently, it is pitched much like a hilltop, where the center of the field is the top of the mountain, and then each of the sidelines has a fairly significant decline, and there are drainage issues associated with that, with the water that comes in off Kenneth Avenue. This project, even if Proposition 2 does not pass, would address the needs of our current field as its outlet. It would be a regrading, a replanting, and drainage addressed. If, however, Proposition 2 passes and we're going to a synthetic field, we would not need to incur that expense, and we can allocate the funds to alternate projects that I'll describe. So this is the total proposition broken down by building for Proposition 1 only, and you can see the breakdown of the building for a total of $34.5 million. Proposition 2 speaks specifically to these items that surround our athletic program. We would talk about the permanent construction of the concession stand, which would include outdoor bathrooms. I know that would be a very attractive feature for some folks. A synthetic turf field and the sidewalks leading to the field to be compliant with ADA requirements. Then we press box, a new scoreboard for the varsity baseball field on the other side of our driveway, and a total proposition of $3.7 million. And to reiterate again, the reason why this became a separate proposition was because of the division amongst opinions we received from the community. We have members of our community that are very strongly in support of this proposal and feel that $3.7 million for this type of enhancement is something they can afford to invest in. And then we heard from other factions of our community that said, we don't feel that way about this project. So the board, I think, very wisely made it a separate proposition. To explain the way that works, again, Proposition 2 cannot pass in isolation. The only way Proposition 2 can pass is if Proposition 1 has already passed. The vote, however, would be simultaneous. When you plan for a project of this scope, you must make sure that you are doing it at projections that are comfortable to know that we could be talking about work that takes place 2 years from now. So we need to account for worst case scenario expenses. So if we are fortunate enough that this project is passed and some of the proposals come in under budget, we have developed a list of alternate projects that we would look at. Here they are. The first one, I will admit, is something I personally made sure made the list. When you tour our facilities, you'll see a number of outdated wood paneled rooms, offices, classrooms. We just need to try to make our building look like it's more pleasing aesthetically environment. Taking the paneling down, however, and sheetrocking and painting comes with expense. So that is on the alternate list. It's not a health and safety item, but it certainly would be appreciated by many. A new generator to make sure that our servers and our computer equipment is working even when power is out. That's the other half of the middle school locker renovation. Redo all those showers and plumbing would be an additional $625,000. Some exterior door repair, water-cooled condensers for the kitchen, satellite wireless clock systems. One of the challenges of being in 4 different buildings and so many classrooms within is every room has a clock and not all of them have the same central time. So to replace the whole system so we know the whole district is operating on the same time schedule would be great. However, it is on the alternate list. Heating and ventilation units where needed, refurbishing the gym, air handling units, the Danfoss valve for heating control, some piping, some landscape that would just be for aesthetic purposes and shade purposes here at the middle school, which by the way the PTA helped us get started, greatly appreciated, and some air conditioning for office areas around the district. Right now we do have some air quality issues for our 12-month employees, however, we didn't feel comfortable placing that as a priority as it does not directly impact students, but should we have additional flexibility, this is something that we would hope to be able to address. This is an explanation of the 2 proposals and the fact that the board is planning to take action on September 28th to adopt a resolution that will move forward with the process. The community vote would then take place pending that board resolution on November the 28th. So we would have 2 full months to talk about the final proposal, for myself and the team to go out to every different stakeholder and talk about the project. We would go to the library, we would go to the taxpayers meeting, we would go to the Electrical Civic Association, anyone who wants to learn more about the bond. We would also invite folks in, take a walking tour, go through the presentation again, and I will tell you the week before the bond vote, we're scheduled to have another forum just like this where we can talk about the final proposal. Tonight, however, is about answering your questions, hearing your feedback. Perhaps you've identified something that we may not have included in the priorities. So it's your turn. I will make sure the microphone is on so everyone in the room can hear if you do step up, and we'll also make sure we're on the recording.
Hi, Julie Beth Otto, former board member. So I have a little history from when we did this bond issue 20 years ago or so, the original one. But going back to the void issue with the parking lot, there was extreme concern over a number of years, things had been dumped down there. So when you talk about that parking lot, please make sure in that estimate that there's been consideration of you may need to completely pull things out and put in a new fill, et cetera.
The concern for the back of the room is if we move forward with the additional parking lot in Boyd, there might be some environmental cleanup that needs to take place prior to that construction taking place. Our team is here, they've noted your concern, and I'm certain that they'll make sure there is no environmental cleanup that has not been considered in the price.
And then tagging on to the environmental issues, we have an environmentally sensitive neighbor there, Machinasian. So I'd also like to ensure that we be good neighbors and make sure any of our drainage and reconfiguring does not impact adversely Machinasian property.
A part of the process that I'd like to explain that I think might alleviate your concern is before anything can be done, assuming we have community support for the bond, the board has taken action, and we now can begin to draw our plans, I'm sure they all need to be approved by the State Education Department. And we're required to do environmental impact studies in order to get that approval. So just as you are concerned about being a good neighbor, not only do we share that concern, but it's required by law.
That's great. Then I had where we're renovating each of the cafeterias, and you kind of talked about, I want to say, the student space. What about the actual kitchens? Because I know from being in them various times, they seem kind of outdated and antiquated. Have we considered that? Have we assessed that? And is it necessary to do some renovation or replacement of equipment there? Which I don't know if equipment necessarily would be covered under a bond issue, but maybe reconfiguring, that's just something to consider.
Do I want to answer that question before you move to your next one?
You can, that'd be great.
We have looked at the condition of the kitchens. The kitchens were part of our building condition survey. And while there are some areas for focus included in the bond, some of the more expensive items weren't deemed necessary in that first list of priorities. The original building condition survey that we completed 2 years ago, which looked at every aspect of our facilities, looked at every area of every building, did list a number of items that we did not include in the proposal because they weren't seen as the priorities that these items were. There is some work identified for the kitchen, but other work did not make that initial priority list.
I'm just trying to keep our lunch ladies very happy.
That is
wonderful.
I agree.
Wonderful food for our students too.
Yes.
And finally, I guess it's kind of a general overall concern, but where it jumps out at me is when we look at the EMS, the bus loop, and renovating the parking lot, which I agree that, maybe there does need to be another kind of drop-off lane, if you will, for EMS. My concern is I don't need to recreate the wheel and renovate a parking lot. I guess my point is I want to see our monies being invested more in academic areas, so when I can curtail something that, well, yes, it'll look pretty and we can make it look nicer, I'd rather spend the money on something that's directly student academic enhancement, like a robotics lab, et cetera, versus we made the parking lot pretty, like we moved it around because we were there anyway. You know what I'm saying? No offense to anyone.
No, it's a lot. I will assure you that the administration and the board shares your opinion.
Yeah.
That is, as many of our finances that we can directly impact students in a positive way, that's our goal. The drop-off area for the middle school is a safety concern. We do have concerns, and it does need to
Absolutely
be
agree with
redone.
that. Yeah.
That picture gives us a high watermark of the most elaborate modification,
Right.
which is why it has that $1.2 million. I'm confident that we'll come up with a plan that we think is most conducive to student safety and stay within that budget.
Well, I'd like it to be less. So I guess I would say for that.
We would too,
But-
but we want to know that it won't exceed that, and then hopefully we'll be able to develop a budget that gives us flexibility in some of those other areas we identified.
Okay, yeah, because I obviously understand like the roofs and leaking and everything else, the things that are really boring to do that you don't see but are very, very necessary. So I certainly appreciate all the effort that the administration and the board has put into the plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Mazzarana. I looked at the numbers, and I'm a retired banker, so I always ask basic questions. You define some things as adequate, but you want to change some things we'd be proud of. I guess my concern is, I would have broken it down differently. Absolutely must-haves, nice-to-haves, okay? And quite a few of the things that you seem to mention were nice-to-haves, or you call them adequate. I really feel embarrassed in that. I'd love to say, hey, I like this, everything is put on the paper. There's a lot of things that you really don't need. Okay? And the question is, why are we spending all this money if they're nice to have rather than absolutely must have? And I have no problem spending things on must-haves at all.
I think that we have eliminated a lot of items on the list that we consider nice to haves. Those that qualify as adequate are not conducive to the best output from our students.
But here you said yourself, quote unquote, things we could be proud of. We don't necessarily be proud of the cafeteria or proud of it. If it works, we need to make it work. If it works well, it needs to be cleaned up, the machinery has to work fine. The seats here are not bad, and we're going to be talking about changing seats and things of that nature. I don't understand why we're spending all this additional dollars when, in my opinion, I mean, this is not a bad place to come to a meeting. So,
I certainly understand you, but I appreciate it.
thank you.
Welcome.
John Chichester. What I noticed a lot, I wonder how long have these buildings been here? How old are they? 1950s or so?
Well, this building was built in 68.
Okay.
The high school in 62.
High school in 1962, middle school in 1968, to answer the age of the buildings question.
And you, Bill? Boyd?
Boyd has separate buildings.
Right.
Both of them were built in the 50s, and then they were connected in the early 2000s.
But then you'll hear the answer. The original construction at Boyd, formerly Cuba Hill Road, were in the 1950s, and then in 2000, the corridor was built to connect the two buildings.
My question is, first off, as to this building, well, going back to Boyd, and it's been there since the 50s. Now all of a sudden we need room for 60 more cars. I don't see it.
I would probably argue that we've always needed that space.
Maybe,
I
but
think
we're assuming that every parent takes their own car.
I will tell you, having attended Boyd events, and I would encourage you to take a drive by Boyd tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is open house for all grade levels.
Okay.
One of the things the principal has to do,
That's something else again, right?
one of the things that the principal has to do to accommodate that is stagger the start times. So rather than being able to invite all the parents in and have a discussion, have the parents go to the classroom, she has to do a singular grade level and then the other two because of the parking situation. During that overlap time, when the third grade is leaving and the fourth and fifth grade is arriving, you will see that there's absolutely no place to park, nowhere to go. So for me, it's the desire to hold Boyd events at Boyd.
So we're talking one evening a year for
No, we have
rotation or whatever?
We have multiple concerts, we have multiple open houses.
Concerts for one grade at a time, or?
Well, that's what we can do it now. To be able to have a building performance, we would need additional parking. Right now, we use overflow parking and cars parked on the back field. These security guards go in the back and they direct cars onto the grass. When we have a bad weather night like tomorrow, we simply can't allow that to occur because it becomes a safety issue.
All right. Secondly, ADA was passed in 1990. I'm sure there's been a lot of work done in all these buildings since 1990. Yet we never brought everything up to ADA compliance. Why are we doing it now?
Well, I want to be in compliance with the law, number one.
Right.
Number two, depending on the work that you've done, the law requires different ADA compliance. So if we do a minor repair in the auditorium, that doesn't affect our compliance issue with the football field. But the moment we touch the football field, we're required to build a sidewalk that would allow a wheelchair to access the
Well, like I said, it's been 27 years. When was the last time they put a new track out there?
Well, the answer, I
You said it
answer
was
that.
twice already.
Any time a project's proposed to the state, part of that will be ADA compliance that is required. You're not required to become fully ADA compliant in all of your facilities in all areas. It depends on the scope of your work. But each time a job is done that has a compliance issue associated with it, you're required to complete that work as well.
Right.
So because of the size and scope of this project, it raises a number of compliance issues in 2017 that may not have existed when the last work was done. But there's no way the state would approve our projects without
You
it.
say the last time the roofs were done were 1994, right?
That's the information I was getting.
It's 4 years after 88 was passed into law.
And the roofs wouldn't be associated with some of the internal projects that need to be done now.
It's not done by the value of the project.
It's done by the area you're addressing.
Another one, 1968, this building has been here since, I believe that's right. When did we decide that was a safety issue for this parking lot? This parking lot's been here since 1968.
I have to tell you, when I was hired as superintendent, one of the things that the board impressed on me was to please visit the arrival and dismissal procedures at each of our buildings, because I think there's been long-standing safety concerns about the way that goes. Elwood has an extraordinary percentage of students that are driven to school each day. Part of that is because of the walking radius that we use, and some parents are just not uncomfortable with that. And others just has to do with the culture of the district. That many parents prefer to drive their children to school rather than to use bus service. Having a full year of opportunity to observe our arrival and dismissal procedures, I think we've done some changes to the plan that have helped, but to make them really safe, where everyone feels comfortable, will require some construction.
I also don't understand air conditioning for cafeterias. If you need an air-conditioned location for all the kids, right here's one.
This is one space. We want to make sure there is an opportunity during the day for the students to cool down on oppressively hot days. While in an emergency situation, you would certainly bring children into the auditorium. It's not a place that they see as part of their day, whereas the cafeteria most definitely is.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Wendy Straneri. Both my kids graduated from the district, so a couple of observations. The drop-off areas in both Boyd and the middle school have always been a nightmare. Both my kids went through both schools, and I was part of that morning drop-off. My son was in band in the middle school when they had it at 0 period. They're both terrible, and they're still terrible, and they are dangerous. But particularly just from my observation, the middle school is really bad. It has always been a problem. Parents, when they're not supposed to go into the busing areas, they go in there anyway, and kids are crossing. I was here just last week to go to the primary vote in the cafeteria, and I was appalled that there were double rows of parents lined up in the first row that goes in this direction, double rows all the way through, that you could not get through. And I was just, okay. And not only is that illegal, but it's dangerous because you have kids that are walking through the parking lot, and there are a lot of blind spots there. And this has always been a problem, so I really think the focus on the redesign and allowing room in specific areas for drop-off and pickup absolutely needs to be addressed, because I have always felt like this was an accident waiting to happen. I would hold my breath on a regular basis when I dropped my kids off. There have also been very bad arguments. I think Boyd's, history with parents screaming at staff and vice versa, and very loudly and very inappropriately with kids around. It has been an embattled area. And I have been to lots of after-school stuff and night stuff in all the schools. And when you have these back-to-school nights, you have them up and down the driveways, on the grass. I think it's long overdue, and it's been put off for many years. That's just my observation.
Wendy, I thank you for that. I appreciate it. And obviously we share your concern, which is why it's part of the proposal. But I do want you to feel comfortable. I want the residents here to feel comfortable that this is not an area that we're not trying to address immediately.
Right. No, I'm just something, the parking lot, it's not really, to me, it's more about safety than aesthetics. That's really what my point is.
I agree 100%.
Just my experience alone with 2 kids, I think it's a very dangerous situation that needs to be addressed.
Yes, but I also want you to leave feeling comfortable, and I want everyone else to feel comfortable that we're not waiting for just the bond proposal to address the concerns that we have about safety.
Well, that's good.
Right now, our best solution is additional personnel outside during arrival and dismissal procedures. So you'll see a very visible presence of our administration, our teaching staff, our teacher assistants.
Yeah, I do see them out there. I was really started to see these double lines of cars.
We have a lot of adults making sure that the children are as safe as possible,
Okay.
and that's what we're doing right now. We would like to make some structural changes to greater enhance the safety.
Okay. Another thing, and it may be something for down the road, you talked about wanting to put on a good face as a community, and some of these spaces are so old and so, broken down. One of my pet peeves in the high school is the faculty/public bathroom in the front of the building that runs alongside the auditorium. For as long as I've gone to that high school and the years that my kids were there, it's a disaster. And I've only been in the women's room. Just want to be clear on that. I have no idea what the men's bathroom looks like.
I'll see.
I mean, rusty sinks, rusty faucets, dripping water that you can't shut off, no place to hang up paper towels. I mean, all the fixtures are decrepit and old and...
So I appreciate you asking a question, which reminds me to make an important point to the community. Not everything that needs to be done in the district must be included in the capital plan.
Right.
There's some work like what you're describing that we hope and plan to include in the regular district budget or through the creation of a capital reserve. Some of the smaller items like remodeling some of the bathrooms, we feel is work that we can hope to do within the operating budget or within a capital reserve fund that we hope to create moving forward. The district is really starting to solidify our financial position. And while we had some tough designations over the last few years, we hope to move forward this year with no financial designations of a negative capacity. So we can start investing some money within the budget and within a capital reserve to do things like renovating one bathroom at a time and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was also a health safety thing too.
I agree that it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Not everything we believe needs to be done was included in the bond proposal. Ms. Lockwood, perhaps you can help me. When the building condition survey was finalized and our architects and engineers toured all of the facilities to look at all the potential expenses, what was about the total dollar figure on everything that needed to be done? So $60 million, Wendy, would have taken care of everything that was observed that needs repair, replace. We have backed that down to $35 million in Proposition 1 because we feel that's a responsible number that we can ask the community to support. We would have loved to include everything in the $60 million proposal, but after several years of investigation by the Facilities Committee and the Board, they feel that this is the more responsible, fiscally responsible presentation to make to the community.
And I think that approach is great. I think that's exactly how you should have approached it, and I appreciate, backing down from that original figure. I think that's important to the community.
Yeah,
I
agree.
You can only handle so much at one time. So I understand prioritizing. To me, it's, I guess because I started off saying it was an aesthetic thing, to me, really, it is more of a health and safety. I worry about the rust. I worry about the running water in there, the loose toilet seats that you feel like you're going to fall off. I mean, there are definitely safety concerns in there as well. It's not just, but but from a personal point of view, I'm also totally embarrassed. When we have people come in, like I've done music sponsors for a number of years, and when we would hold NISMA, and we would have a lot of judges come in, and that's the bathroom they would use, and I was really embarrassed, and I still am.
And part of what you're saying is exactly reiterating the thoughts that I've shared with the community. I think our board and our community really wants our facilities to be a place where everyone can be proud of and everyone can take pride when we have visitors come in, when we use these facilities on a daily basis for our students. We want our students to hold their heads high when they enter their cafeterias, their auditoriums, their classrooms. Now, they make do. And I can't deny the fact that our students do a terrific job making do. But I'm not sure that's a reflection of the priority that this community places on education. Elwood is not a village, it's not a town, it's a school district. And I think that what I've learned in my just over a year here is our community takes great pride in their schools. I want that to be reflected in the facilities, and I think there's a good portion of our community that feels the same way.
If just you were asking for things maybe that weren't in there that me mentioning, and that was just one of my little...
I see at least 3 people writing down review bathrooms, so that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Sherry Jackson. My daughter is currently in John Glenn. She's been through Harley, she's been through Boyd, she's been through the whole bit. The pickup problem, well, it's the best of the worst. Pickup and actually not the drop off, the pickup at the end of the day at John Glenn. There also is a double road there too, and sometimes cars are in the middle there, and if your daughter has to go across the street there, where the other row is, it is also a safety. I don't know what you have in mind there. Now, my husband went through the district, he graduated in 1979, and you didn't have all that brickwork. And I says, where did you do your pickup? And it was closer to the school, near the entrance there. I know you have the buses there.
Right.
So other than the safety there, again, it's the best of the worst, you can still see your child, even though they're older. The pickup is not by the front door. So I was wondering what kind of plans there are for configuration of the parking lot. That's number one. Number two, you're talking about changing the brickwork or something. Now, I know you redid all the parking lots and everything. Wouldn't it have made sense to do the brickwork first before you do all the asphalt?
Thank you for asking the question. The seal coating that was done by ARC over the summer are not on areas that will be addressed at the high school. The curbing, the concrete, the brickwork that needs to be removed are the sidewalks and areas around the building itself. All of those roadways and parking lots that our crew did, it was just seal coating. It wasn't replacing the asphalt. And these are not areas that will be directly addressed.
Okay. Also, I've noticed, and I know the reason why, there's poles going up, coming into Elwood Road. It looks like you're going to be putting up gates. Possible gates, okay. I understand, I've heard through the grapevine, kids are hanging out in the school at night, and you shouldn't have that. I get it. Well, my daughter is in the band program, and there's a lot of after-school activities. I'm sure there's other kids that are in sports. How are you going to provide for, if the gates are closed, if you do put up those gates, how are you going to get into after-school activities, which are legitimate, but it's not hanging out in the school grounds at 10 o'clock at night?
We have left our discussion of the bond, but I'm happy to answer your question.
Okay.
We are considering some gates for the entrances of this campus. That would close the campus when nothing is in session. So if we were to install gates at those entrances, it would be for times when no one should be on campus. We would never lock gates when there's student activities taking place.
Okay, I just have a concern too with that. I know it's not part, I do apologize for taking up the time, but I'm seeing that going up, so this is the first meeting where I could address that. The seasons is going up, okay? I'm not saying I want to use it as a pass-through. I don't want to do anything wrong. But what's going to happen is there going to be a lot of backflow of traffic with the seasons and the gates closed. So kids could be coming to school later and the buses later due to the overflow of the new seasons.
I will help you with your concern. If we are to install gates, much like the one we have at the end of the driveway to Boyd, it would only be closed overnight when there is no activity taking place. The only time gates would ever be closed is when no one should be on school ground, and if anyone's here, they're trespassing. That would be the only time the gates that don't exist would be used.
Also, this bond referendum, is this going to be, would this actually bust the cap, or would it be within the 2% cap?
Thank you very much. The reason why the bond vote would take place in November is because it is completely outside the district budget. One has absolutely nothing to do with the other.
Okay.
So there is no requirement about a percentage of increase we can ask the community for to support the bond, which is why we're trying to give our homeowners a good picture of what they may incur as an additional expense, because it's completely outside of the district budget. The bond vote would be held in November, so that there'd be no confusion about the district programmatic budget when the vote is held in May.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
I have a question and a comment.
Sir.
The question is, I think we discussed it when you came to our Civic Association meeting or someplace or another. The school buildings are red hot. The kids go to school in shorts and short sleeves in the middle of the winter, and they leave all the doors open so all the heat can go out and we can pay twice as much. I believe it was you who said that some of these heating systems have two
On and off.
on and off. It's either on or it's off. I didn't notice, maybe I missed it, anything about fixing the heating system.
You know, I have to tell you, the community is doing a great job asking questions that give me the opportunity to share additional information. In concert with this bond proposal, there's another process taking place in the school district, and it's an energy performance contract. Just this past week, our facilities committee met with 3 finalists of contractors who came to make proposals to the district about large-scale investments we can make on our facilities to correct problems with heating and ventilation and other efficiency items. The board will be entertaining one of those proposals within the next few weeks and entering into an energy performance contract with an outside vendor. They work in concert with our team, with our architects, and we enter into a contract with contractors who come in to do work to address concerns like the one you described about our heat at no expense to the district or taxpayer. What they do is promise a return on their investment in energy savings and fuel savings and other cost savings. And the complete onus on that is on the vendor that comes in. So if they do $1 million of work for us, they project that over the next 5 years, we will have $1 million in saving in our fuel costs. If we realize that savings, great. If we don't, they are on the hook for the additional expenses that have been invested in our district. So there are a number of priority items that aren't included in the bond because we were successfully able to include them in our energy performance contract.
That's absolutely great. Wait, there's something else. Well, I'll get to the comment because maybe I'll think of the other thing in a minute. I happen to agree with John back there that there seem to me to be a number of things in this that are wish lists rather than absolute necessities. Obviously, if you're sloshing around the halls and the roof is leaking, I mean, there's no question. But some of, like, to me, my son and now my grandchildren went all the way, some went all the way through these schools and the grandchildren here now. I think this auditorium is absolutely lovely. I mean, I don't see a couple stains on the floor, but I don't see anything really wrong with it. It's rather attractive. And it's a couple of $1 million to fix this. You know, it's not leaking, the seats are not falling down. I think that, to me, there are things in this bond issue that are real nice, but unnecessary. So
I think that there is some difference of opinion on that particular item. And when we did our survey for the community, and we've had these types of discussions with community members, aesthetics and appearance and updating comes up again and again and again. So I believe when the board made their decision to include the proposal, it was with that thought in mind that we've had a good number of residents come forward and say, adequate is not enough. Adequate is not the reflection that we want to have on our schools. The investment that we're making into facilities, many people believe has a direct correlation to home values, has direct correlation to the ability to sell a home when one is looking to retire and move from the community, that when new folks come in and tour facilities, they want it to be, you know, modern and updated for 2017. This room, can you all assemble? Can you hear me? Sure. When the middle school puts on a play and the lighting on the stage doesn't work and we can't hear the students on the microphone and people trip on the carpet because it's held down by duct tape, I would say that's inadequate, myself. And I understand that there can be a variety of opinions on that issue. But the majority of folks we have heard from have indicated this type of remodeling is something that they would support.
I remember what the comment, the other thing I wanted to say. You said that we would be mostly replacing expiring bonds with the new ones.
Sure.
Does that mean that, like, the total amount that it's going to cost, depending on your house, isn't that amount is not going to be extra and above what you're already paying?
So, for the expiring debt and taking on new debt, we would have had to limit the bond to a total of, to incur no new debt, $21 million to be a complete expiring debt being replaced with new debt. When we looked at what we'd be able to accomplish with $21 million, we weren't able to include enough of the projects that the board felt comfortable moving forward at that level. So the new debt that would be incurred is the dollars above $21 million.
So those figures that you gave on how much it would cost, like if your house was assessed at $5,100, not $3,800, it was like an extra $500,000 a year or 500.
I'll go back to that slide.
Yeah, 500 a year or.
I'll go back.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
That's an additional $508 above and beyond.
Per year. That, I'm sorry, and that would be if Proposition 1 and Proposition 2 were passed, including the athletic upgrades. Yes, if your house is assessed at one of those higher rates, that's our approximate expense. And again, what we're doing that we feel will be helpful to our residents is we're going to be putting the calculator with the formula correctly inputted on the district website, so you can take out your tax bill, put in your specific information, and see what the specific yearly and monthly cost would be for your home.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Bosser, Anthony Laudo. As you may know, I have 2 children that are in the district currently, and I have a few questions regarding what's happening here tonight. First off, I have a complete love for the district and a bit of a dedication to trying to make it one of the best districts on the island, because I think we're very close to being just that.
Thank you.
I do understand everything that's presented. I see why there is some pushback on what may be deemed necessary and not necessary, and that's a review.
That's the purpose of our night, sure.
I'm just curious on a few things, and to enlighten me, I would appreciate you just explaining the numbers that we've seen here tonight. Where do these numbers come from? Has this been put out to bid? Now forgive me, I did arrive 5 minutes late, but did this go to bid, or are these just estimates from our team back here, or?
Yep, our architectural team works with their contractors to create anticipated expenses associated with each project. So they are estimates, and just as if you have work done in your home, a budget is set, and then you work within that budget. But they are estimates, and we could find that once the plans are approved and the work is being done, that we see finances shifting from one area to another that are not exactly what's been proposed tonight.
Okay, now, thank you. Now, I do understand proposal 1, there's 1, there's 2, and then if there's surplus, we have a number of other things that you would use the surplus for. I don't know if this is possible, but I think it may help the issue. If you are able to give some level of priority to where surplus funds would go in an order that might be agreed to by everyone, because the aesthetics are going to be a bit pushed back from some, but I'm so glad that Ms. Mancini brought up the HVAC issue, because that's a major concern, and I know that some of that is addressed in the surplus. I don't know if the surplus items can be prioritized in a way to present this to people, but it might be a smart move.
Yeah, and that might be some additional work we ask the board to engage in. At the end of the day, it's the decision of the board if we do have surplus funds, how they are spent. Clearly, the administration would make recommendations that we would help inform them. But I think that that's a fine project to engage in, of taking a look at that list and perhaps placing it in priority order. Part of it is the scope of the expense. We won't know until the project takes place to what level we can hit those additional items. You know, and while you raise the question, it's great that my board listens when I present, because Mr. Tomio did a good job reminding me of something I've said several times and neglected to say tonight. One of the challenges we have when putting this proposal together is the debt that we would be incurring here would be a 15-year bond. So one of the challenges that we face is not only projecting our needs now, but what our needs will be 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. Because we're trying to look at the complete scope of work that may need to be done or will need to be done over a 15-year period of time. So for some of these areas that we've deemed as adequate, will they continue to be usable and serviceable 15 years from now? And for some of the projects that we may look at and say, maybe we can get by for a few more years. The real question that's facing the administration and the board is, can we get by for 15 more years? And for the items that we included, that's where we came to the conclusion that we simply could not.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I have a question.
Sure.
What I do not understand is, you mentioned, and I didn't memorize everything, but I believe it was the Harley roof was put up in 1994, and you did numerous repairs since then, and we are looking to replace that roof, because obviously if you're doing numerous repairs, it's out of warranty. So how do we make sure that what we're doing here, I mean, I understand we have a team from Patchogue, I believe. Am I correct? PDS is Patchogue based. How do we make sure here that things are being done right? How do we make sure of the longevity of the repairs that are going into the school? Because I don't understand why a roof in 1994 had numerous repairs in the last 25 years that weren't under warranty. And if you're doing a full rip-off, why aren't we looking into, and maybe we are because I haven't seen everything, but why aren't we looking into the level of insulation that's going on that roof before the new roof is coming down? And while we're at that, let's look at the warranties. And while we're at that, let's see if the roofing contractor can also put down stanchions to make us solar ready. Because if you're talking about the future, I'm not saying put the panels on, I'm saying let's be solar ready. Let's put the roofing contractor on the hook for every roof of this district to make sure that the district has insulated roofs, because you have a considerable plenum that fills with hot air, like a boiler room. Let's make sure that the roof that goes down is warranted, that this bond is long gone, and let's make sure that should a wonderful program come out, should our wonderful, let's just say the man that's in office right now, let's say if he puts something in there that brings back some of the incentives that were once there, whether they be tax and rebate incentives, to put solar on here, let's make sure that all roofs are free of leaks, warranted, solar ready, conduits, pitch pockets, everything done, so that if we can put solar on in the future, we can get even additional benefit. And that may be coming from this energy contractor that you were talking about. Okay, and let's also make sure that he's very insured for completed operations, make sure that if he goes bust, we can keep him on the hook for the entire expense that he's committed to.
I will pay you a compliment. Our last Board of Education meeting was when the Board of Education had the opportunity to review this proposal and make some comments and changes and express some concerns. Everything you just raised was raised by the Board of Education during the last meeting. And our architects that are here tonight spoke to that very concern and gave the board assurances that everything you just described would indeed take place. And the warranties on the roofing work that would be done would be for 20 years beyond the installation process. And for solar, you're correct. We examined the possibility of solar and where we may place panels as part of our energy performance contract. And several of the vendors who have made proposals to the Facilities Committee included portions of our roofs that would be used for solar panels.
Okay. So if the estimates that are provided by the architects and team are estimated on a 20-year roof, will the team also look into a 30-year warranty roof, a 40-year? There are products on the market now that can warranty a roof for 50 years, a commercial roof. Is that something that might be open?
I don't want to speak.
And I'm not expecting you to. It's just something that I think we would like to see.
Mr. Siegel, do you have a response to that question?
You can actually put in alternates for a 25, 30, 35, and 40-year roof for you, and then the district can evaluate it at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Because one of the questions I have, I think, in looking at the big picture, if you mentioned that there was a humidity issue in one of the music rooms, a moisture mold issue, and there's
Moisture, yes.
Moisture.
Mold, that's
I don't
came
want to
back next.
Okay, so moisture issue. Usually moisture means water is getting in. If the roof solves that, the dehumidification that you propose for that room is going to be moot. So maybe there's some of that surplus that could buy us a roof with more longevity.
Potentially.
That's I'm wondering who, is the reliance put upon the team to come up with these options, or this is what's going to be generated over the next couple of months while this is being proposed to the community through these these basically town hall meetings, and how are we going to make sure that the best options are being put into the school? No disrespect for the team, but how are we going to make sure that everything is looked into the highest and best?
Right. We do rely heavily upon our architects and the engineers that they work with in order to make sure the proposals are responsible and most reflective of the district need. Our group interviewed many architects and spoke to many firms before they elected to work with BBS on this issue. BBS is a firm that works with a large percentage of Long Island school districts, and the references and the referrals that we've received regarding their firm from other districts that are engaging in projects and have done previous projects have been very high marks. So we do place a lot of confidence in them. I'm an educator.
I get it.
Not a contractor.
And I mean no disrespect.
So we work with our team that does have that area of expertise to make informed recommendation. And I'm going to tell you what, our board asked 3 hours of probing, deep questions that demonstrated their understanding as residents, but also with some other areas of expertise in these areas. I was very impressed with the level of inquiry that went to our team, and their responses satisfied the board and made us comfortable bringing this proposal to the community.
Okay, I'll ask one more question because you just triggered something when we said the word probing. You mentioned the thought and the goal of adding an additional parking lot, which is, I do understand the need for that and do not disagree, but you're going into uncharted waters. It's land that's there, and there was a mention that there might be an environmental issue of some sort. We don't know, but you never know until it's open.
The only thing I'll pause you on that is that there can't be any toxins or other harmful products dumped on the school property. So I think that the type of fill that's been there is probably tree limbs and glass clippings and things of that nature, because I can't imagine, and Mr. McDonald, please correct me if I'm wrong, that anything else was dumped in that area.
It's more like mulch, which are...
Oh, okay, then there is no concern with that.
Yeah, the state would shut us down if we put anything toxic on
No,
the
I know they would do that to you, but if it's area that you can't really access and can't really see, you just...
Oh, no, it's directly adjacent to the building. It's an area at the rear of the parking lot. If anyone tried to dump a hazardous product there, the state would know and we would be in big trouble. It just hasn't occurred.
Okay, that was my last question, but thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pete Kelly. Just a couple of questions on the funding.
Sure.
What is our state aid rebate or percentage for capital improvement?
I don't want to say the wrong number. 73? 73.5% return from state.
Okay, so I'm assuming this work is going to be going over several years.
Unfortunately, the process is slow. That if the community sees fit to approve the bond proposal in November, it could be a good period of time before the shovel hits the dirt, as they say. 18 months would not be unexpected.
Okay, so okay, that's fine. On the two bond issues, one was for $34 million, the other one was for 1/10 of that. The cost that was calculated for the taxpayers was 50%. It was 300 for one and 120 or something for the other. Could you explain the difference or what?
Yeah, and that question was kind of raised earlier. Because of the expiring debt, the first 21 million is the clean break. So it's the millions above that
There's the delta increase over what we're normally running for a debt obligation.
Each million above that initial 21 is $20 per year.
Okay.
For the average.
That's great. The with the air conditioning and so forth, I have more questions to the architects. But two of the things that happened the last time we had air conditioning was the ventilation system itself, the actual airflow, didn't quite match the tonnage. So that ought to be looked at. And the other question just out there, I don't expect an answer, is the electrical service to the building. You're probably going to have a pretty big increase in load. These are all designed, so...
Correct, and all of that additional expense and upgrades has to be included in the proposal for the work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. My name is Kevin Anderson. I have two kids that currently attend Harley.
Thank you for keeping us in business.
I understand the need for aesthetics. You want when kids, as they get older, are walking to school or when they walk into their classroom, they feel like they're stepping into their generation and not looking around and saying, well, things in here look so old, and maybe a friend of theirs goes to a school where they have iPads and surfboards, so you kind of want to stay with the times. The question I have, I don't know if the architects can answer this. What is the square footage of concrete that is supposed to be replaced at Harley? $346,000 does seem a bit excessive. I do actually construction work, so when I saw that figure, it kind of raised a red flag to me. So is it the entire school that's the concrete is being lifted up and redone, or is it just areas that need to be repaired?
I will turn to architects to see if you can give an informed response.
So mostly it's in the bus loop area, it's about 14,000 square feet. And there's also some curbing that we've been replacing. A lot of that work is all in the bus loop. Whole loop.
The answer to those listening from home is there's approximately 14,000 square feet of sidewalks and curbing at Harley that need to be replaced around the bus loop.
So I guess the follow-up question would be, what skill sets do our maintenance people have? Because 14,000 square feet, although it may seem like a lot, breaking up concrete and pouring new really isn't, to me, from what I've done, experience in my job. I still think that $346,000 does seem a bit excessive.
Our guys, our team, do a tremendous amount of work internally that saves the taxpayers countless dollars. All of the seal coating that you saw take place on this campus over the summer was all done internally, materials that we purchased, and labor done by our crew, and that's wonderful. The scope of work that needs to be done regarding sidewalks and curbing exceeds what we would ask the crew to do. The number of gentlemen that work on our grounds crew is 4. To ask them to take on that type of project without an outside contractor is just more than they can take on. Well, all the regular work of the district, all the lawn cutting, all the landscaping, and all the repair work that they do so consistently, it's just not a scope of a project that can be done. Okay, and just to further answer your question, this just in. Part of the estimates for that repair work includes the architect's fees, includes bidding it out, it includes the percentage that we have to pay bond counsel to make sure it's done right, and the fiscal advisor. So much like when you do a project on your home, there are all of those associated costs that factor into the price. It's not just the labor and the concrete.
Okay, last question is, are these going out to bid, and will the bids be made public for us to view?
Every job must go out to bid, and I know the community hears a lot about lowest bidder, must be assigned. The correct phraseology is the lowest responsible bidder. Our experts have the opportunity to discount bids they do not feel are realistic. They have the ability to eliminate vendors where there might be some concerns about the quality of the work that they would do. Whether or not the bids are visible publicly, when the board accepts bids, it becomes a matter of public record.
Okay, well, I just want to say that I'd be curious to see who the architect decides on and what the scope of the project was. Because for myself, I'd like to be able to see who the contractor was chosen, what kind of work for myself,
Sure.
What they have done previously before it actually is already signed off and given to them. So I just wanted to just make that be known.
Yeah, and one of the things that we have to put our trust and faith in is the diligence of those that we work with, that we contract with, and that of the Board of Education to provide oversight. And that's why the community elects these representatives, to make sure the administration and our contracting employees are doing due diligence when entertaining bids and such. We can't, and I know you understand this, open up every bid to the community and say, what do you think? That's not the way governance of the organization works. But the Board of Education will absolutely be evaluating these types of bids on the recommendation of our internal experts and the architects that we work with. And I can tell you, from having worked with them for last year, they will ask lots of questions and make sure they have 100% confidence in the folks that are hired to do any work in these facilities.
I hope so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Judy Pesatore. And my concern is, because this is approved in November, I can see that we're going to start trying to get some of the work done as quickly as possible, particularly the roofs. My concern is, has it been built in because of the current problems that we've encountered with the hurricanes? And from previous experience, I know that the cost of materials skyrockets after this occasion occurs. Has this been built in to the proposal, or is there going to be, this will be first, this will be second, third, and so forth? So this way it's itemized and people will see that.
Rates of inflation have been included in our proposals. Anticipated increases to fuel expenses that are normally incurred as time passes have been included in the proposals. We know that making the proposal in November of 2017 and the work was perhaps taking place in 2019, we need to account for typical increases in the market, and that's been done as part of the proposal. Thank you. State your name.
John Kelly, for those of you that don't know me. I think it might be helpful with the prices, because like the consumer science is home, the home, like I sat in there and I saw the Harvest Gold ad, Harvest Gold Kitchen, I get it. But like $5.25, I'm like thinking, even if you put Viking appliances in there, like you can't figure out where it's coming from, so it might be helpful if there was some kind of breakdown. I get it, you have to account for plumbing, you pull stuff out, stuff breaks, but it might be helpful for everybody if there was some kind of breakdown or something to help us understand the fees.
Donna, and I appreciate that, and this is for the first time tonight. I'm going to call upon our architect to do a little more of a breakdown of where we arrive at that type of expense, because there are other fees associated that we did include in the slide that make up why we get to some of those numbers. So would you mind, Fred?
So each of the
I'm going to ask you to come up just so we hear you on the camera. Sorry.
So each of the estimates that you see here this evening are what we consider fully loaded, and that means that they include all of the contingencies and fees that would be required. The first 5% of that is a design contingency, because we're estimating things without having the ability to take things apart, to break open walls, to have test borings done to see exactly what's there. There's another 5% included in there that's construction contingency, because at times we open up a wall and find something in there that we did not expect, and therefore we allocate money for that. Our typical change order ratio is much lower than the 5%, but that's the industry standard, so that's what we carry. A third 6% is escalation. You talked about a little bit before, because the work is going to be done in the future. We also include owner soft costs, and that's school district money for construction management fees, legal fees, borrowing fees, advertising, anything that the school district needs to pay for directly, that money comes out of that as well. And the last section is architectural and engineering design fees. So those are all included in the numbers up there. So a $300,000 number, construction cost would be probably $400,000 as represented as a fully loaded cost.
Ms. Kelly, I hope that helps to answer your question, that there is a lot of unknowns associated in the proposals that we make. But again, as I stated earlier, we need to make sure that when we budget for a project, we are at the absolute limit of what that might be, considering those unknowns, hoping that we come in and complete the project under budget, giving us the flexibility to address some of those areas we've identified. But what we cannot allow to happen is under budget and not be able to finish a project. Other questions from the community? Mrs. Lockwood, anything I did not indicate that we plan to include? Is there anything the board would like me to address that we didn't discuss? Sorry.
Just have two more quickies.
Sure.
First one,
I don't know the score of the Giant game. What's the score of the Giant game? Okay, nothing. Off we go.
No, I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Just pulled out the station there. Well, you do the second one first. Harley Avenue.
Sure.
I asked this last year. How long would you keep that place open?
Well, it's a good question. There have been some inquiries about our enrollments. For the last 10 years or so, prior to last year, we saw a small decline in the enrollment of our students coming in. Last year and again this year are the first years where we're seeing increases from our enrollment. And right now, the class sizes at Harley vary between 23 students and 25 students. So we're not in a position where we see any type of school closing in the foreseeable future.
Are we using that whole school?
We lease part of it to outside groups that run our pre-K program. So some of the classrooms are taken by rent payers.
Okay.
And we also have some classrooms in each of our buildings where a part of the students here are tuition students that come in from the districts for specialized programs that we house here in Elwood.
And then again,
Boyd, sure.
I understand we're only using one of those buildings currently.
Say again?
We're only using one of those buildings
Oh,
currently?
no, every room is filled to capacity at Boyd.
Really?
Absolutely.
Oh, I was told that somebody said that we were leasing out part of that.
Downstairs classroom is used for aftercare, aftercare at Boyd. But that's the only thing that I can see that would relate to not using. There's one classroom downstairs we don't use.
That's after school?
It's for after school care program.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, we're filled capacity. The fifth grade at Boyd right now is 25 children per classroom, every classroom is full.
It's 4, 5, 6 at Boyd, right?
It's 3, 4, 5. 3, 6 grade is in this building and also using every classroom.
And 1, 2, 3 is Harley?
K1, 2.
K1, 2.
Correct.
Thank you. And I still can't remember.
I distracted with the Giants.
So I'm not going to go with it.
Anyone else that can help? Sure. By the way, while you're thinking of questions, tonight is not the end of the conversation. The board is going to consider everything that they heard tonight, everything we report back. They will meet again on the 28th to take action on setting a dollar figure. And we will have a follow-up form where we explain everything that was included in the bond, respond to some of the questions that were raised here tonight, long before the vote. Mrs. Laughlin and I will also be touring different facilities to speak about the bond, so you'll see hopefully a date where we'll be speaking at the library, the Taxpayers Association, the Civic Association for Chester Hills, and anybody else who'd like to hear from us. So tonight is hopefully a good introduction and give you a good understanding of what we're doing, but it's certainly not the last conversation.
If we're coming under budget, instead of replacing paneling and doing, well, we'd like to do this or that and the other, why don't we just give it back to the bank and cut it down a little bit?
Mrs. Laughlin, would you like to answer that question?
No, I actually prefer to.
Okay, even better. Bill?
You do have the authority, the board at its discretion.
Bill, do you want to come to the microphone just so we can hear you on camera? The question is, if we have surplus funds at the end of the project, why would we not return that money to the bank rather than paying the debt?
The board has at its discretion the ability to return the money to the taxpayers. You would issue fewer bonds long-term to fund the project. Alternatively, the board can, at its discretion, review and embark on some of the alternative projects. It gives you the flexibility, and the district isn't committed to one path at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
And I still don't think we need air conditioners in the cafeterias. Thank you.
If you had been at the 6th grade dance on Friday night and smelled what I smelled, you would feel very different. You would feel very different.
They did in that movie.
You know, I'll be here tomorrow. Feel free to give me a call.
Sorry, on the roofs, since the roofs have been an issue for 40 years, part of it is that we have flat roofs. And I was surprised to hear that we can get a 20-year warranty on the roofs.
It's just certainly more than we can get in our homes, sure.
Well, no, usually when we did them last time, it was a 10-year warranty if you had them repaired and maintained by an approved.
Yeah, 20 years seems like a good period of time for it.
Yeah. Now, Harley, I know, is a tin roof, and the problem with that is the roof itself, or is it underneath the roof that we're getting leaks? Do we know? It's on the flat roof, as they are on other buildings. Are we changing the roofs, or are we just going to continue with the flat roof?
So the question about whether or not we can pitch our roofs to try to help with these drainage concerns has been asked in every venue where we've spoken about the bond. So I've heard the answer enough that I'll give you verbatim on what has been told. It might be structurally sound decision to put in a pitched roof. However, it is absolutely cost prohibitive and would not be entertained by the state of New York. The New York State Education Department would view that as an inappropriate use of taxpayer dollars, because the additional expense that would be associated with changing the structure of the roof, which, keep in mind, would require us to relocate all of the air handling units, all of the electrical work, all of the ventilation, would make it so cost prohibitive that this entire bond proposal would just take care of the roofs. And if we submitted that plan to the State Education Department, they would say that was such an extravagant expense and unnecessary for daily operation that it would be rejected.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. We've heard that question. I'd say last chance, but I don't really mean it. There'll be other chances. Yes, sir.
I just have one question, the solar thing. Why not put the solar up in the house? It's going to make money.
So part of our energy performance contract has looked very carefully at the solar issue, and what we're learning is that the return on investment in solar is not as extraordinary as it once was, and that the
government's not going to make a rebate.
Yeah, that's part of it. And the other piece is, when we look at the energy performance contract, the contractors have to guarantee the savings. So they're not ready to give us a full investment of covering all of our roofs with solar panels with the confidence that the energy savings will recoup the expense in a reasonable period of time. So the solar panels that have been included in the proposals are small targeted areas of specific buildings in the district, not covering each of our roofs with solar panels. But it's something that we've looked very carefully at. Any other questions? What I will do then is thank you all very much for joining us this evening. We appreciate your time. If you could please do me the favor, for each one of you that is here, if you can tell 2 people to watch the video that'll be posted on YouTube tomorrow so they have the same information, that'll help the word spread through the community. Thank you very much. Enjoy the game.